Good morning, everyone. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Carly Perry. I am Managing Director of Spring Innovation. We are the Innovation Centre of Excellence for the water sector, and I'll give you a little bit more information on us shortly. But really happy today that we are partnering with a big group of water companies, in fact, 13 water companies and other suppliers, to hear more about creating a data sharing infrastructure for the water sector. So for anyone who isn't aware of us, as I said, we're the Innovation Centre of Excellence for the UK and Ireland water sector. We are supported by all 18 water companies across the UK and Ireland, as well as supply chain. And ultimately, our goal is to remove duplication in the sector. So there's fantastic innovation happening regionally, but what we want to do is share the learnings with each other to remove duplication of trials and also mobilise collaborative trials together. So we are the custodian of the Water Innovation Strategy document. For anybody who hasn't seen that document, we're going to pop links in the chat, so the Spring team will do that. It lives on our website and it has 7 themes of challenge areas that we want to be solving in the sector. Today's showcase actually is cross-cutting across all of those themes and will help to mobilise and enable the sector to solve all of those problems. We also put out calls for innovation relating to those themes in a service that's called the Spring Accelerator. Over the next couple of months, we will be launching another accelerator focusing in on enhancing and protecting natural systems. So it's worth keeping your eye out for that. But today's service offering is all about knowledge sharing, and we have 2 aspects to that. We have the knowledge library, which sits on the Spring platform, and there is a bank of knowledge case studies there for you to go and search and learn from and utilise. We're nearly at 50 case studies there with about 80 in the pipeline, so it's a forever changing picture, and we will publicise new ones as they go up. This event is a 2-hour deep dive showcase into a project to help share the deeper insights about how a project has gone. What's gone well? What were challenges? What are lessons learned? How can you get involved in the thinking? So you'll hear from a big team of people on that today. This is showcase number 13. And we've had nearly 2,000 people register for these showcases now. So we're really proud of how these are helping to accelerate learning in the sector. We've delivered across all of the water innovation strategy themes, but like I said, this one will also cross-cut across all themes. Very happy today. We've got 150 people registered for this. We've got attendees from Australia and New Zealand and our first attendees from Norway. So welcome to you to the call. We record these and they get uploaded to the Spring platform. There is a link coming into the chat for you that will take you to that platform. So if you want to go back and search for any of the previous knowledge shares that we've done, you can go and search by Water Innovation Strategy theme and find showcases and re-watch those recordings. Knowledge sharing is in a growth space in the sector at the moment. As we all collaborate more, we're all working together to knowledge share. And we're proud to say that we're working with Ofwat to support the growth of knowledge sharing in the sector and to build a stronger culture around it. If you've won Ofwat funding, you are required to share the knowledge of those projects. There's been 77 projects funded, 110 million. So there's a huge amount of knowledge there to share, and we will be supporting that in the future. So if you're a water company or a supplier and you want to share, please have a look at the knowledge transfer link that will go into the chat, and that will tell you how you can actually share your knowledge through Spring. Okay, so on to today's session. What I'm going to do is quickly walk you through the agenda, introduce the speakers before I hand over to Jez. So there's a lot to cover today. We are going to do introductions to speakers, the project, talk about the bigger picture, what is Stream, the story so far, the delivery approach. There will be a 5 to 10 minute break happening as well before coming back and getting into lessons learned. And that's really the place that you can learn from what this team has achieved over the past few years. And there will be Q&A as well. So just before we get into who the speakers are, I just wanted to also share that this project is very personal to me, having been involved in the team back in 2020 when this project was set up. And not only is open data a big passion for me in terms of enabling the sector to innovate, but also thinking back to when we started this project, it was March 2020, just before we all got locked down. And I feel like this project helped to keep some of my sanity whilst I was locked down on my own for that first period. So a big thank you to all of the team for that. So in terms of the team for today, let me introduce the speakers that we've got. So you're going to be hearing from Jeremy Heath, Innovation Manager from SES Water, as well as Gavin Starks, CEO and founder of Icebreaker One, Melissa Talek, Open Data Lead, Northumbrian Water and co-lead for Stream, Andrew Myers, Lead Architect, Northumbrian Water and co-lead for Stream, and Jessica Davis, Associate Manager, Growth and Innovation at SEA Partners, one of the partners on this project. So with that in mind, Jez, I am going to hand over to you and looking forward to a really insightful session.
Thank you, Carly. And good morning, everybody. So look, firstly, I want to start by just saying thanks to the team from Spring and also Stream for organising this showcase. Showcases are really important. Okay, what they allow us to do is it allows a team that's involved in a project to share how that project is developing. And it means that other people like yourselves here, you can see the early insights from that, but equally feed back into that project. Okay, have that opportunity to help steer it by working with us and kind of going, yeah, this is really good. Have you thought about and all those kind of things? So that's why showcases are important. What is Stream? Okay, well, look, between now and 2024, Stream is going to design and deliver here we go, network of data pipes. Now we need those to share useful industry data sets. And the idea is that will be done in a secure, standardized, easy to access way. It'll allow our data from our individual companies to flow into larger data sets so we can collaboratively solve tough sector challenges. But we know that Stream's impact is going to reach far beyond the water sector. You know, when we look at the other sectors like banking and transport, we find that publishing data, builds trust and really arms the innovators with the information they need to launch new services. And that's what we're really hoping with this, is that it's going to open it up and people will be coming rushing to us with new services, new solutions, which are going to benefit our customers. Now, there's a load of us involved in this. I'm going to list them all off because you know what it is. Every water company wants a little name check at the moment. So here we go. So you've got Anglian Water Services, Severn Trent Water, Scottish Water, SES Water, United Utilities, South West Water, Dear Cymru, Southern Water, Yorkshire Water, Wessex, and then recently Affinity Water and South Staffs joined as well. So that's from the water companies. And then obviously we've got other partners as well. We've got Amy, SEA Partners, the Open Data Institute, Costain, Kruger, and Icebreaker One as well. Now, I want to look at why sharing knowledge is important. So currently you can see, and some of you know, we were thinking that's not Jez's office. No, I'm actually down in Wessex at the moment. I'm on a leakage road trip. I'm going around the country sharing leakage, research and innovation with the water companies, understanding their needs. Great example of collaboration. But I know that sharing insight is just one thing. Sharing the actual data is far, far better. When you're sharing the actual data, it gives you deeper insight. It brings in more participants. You get those wider data sets as well. For me, the key to driving innovation is understanding our data and the learnings that are hidden in it. You know, as I've been going around this tour, I've been talking with all of the leakage managers across the country. And one of the questions I've been asking them is, look, how willing would you be to share some of your data, that leakage data, so that other people can look at that data and come up with analysis about it? And they're all going, yeah, that'd be brilliant. We'd love to be able to do that. And they do that because they recognise the benefits, not only to themselves, but to the wider industry as well. So Carla's already set this out, but very quickly, what's the plan for the showcase? It's going to be a 2-hour showcase with a variety of speakers. And they're going to be explaining the following things to you. They're going to look at far more about Stream, how it works, what it's going to do, the story of how Stream started and where we've got to on that journey so far. Then what it's going to deliver. How do we go about deciding which data sets we're going to start? Then you're going to get a coffee break or tea break, beverage of choice. And then when you come back, we can look at the lessons brought in from outside and also what we've learned as well. And then finally, there'll be a good Q&A session. So get your questions ready. It does remind me, if you've got any questions as you're going through all of this presentation, though, best place to do is put them in the chat so we can see them coming up. But now I'm going to hand over to Gavin from Icebreaker One. He's going to be talking about the bigger picture around open data and how Stream fits into that. Thank you.
Super, thanks very much and welcome all. My name is Gavin Starks, I'm the founder of Icebreaker One and previously co-chaired the development of the Open Banking Standard, and prior to that set up and ran the Open Data Institute for about 4 years as well. I wanted to just elevate our eyes a minute from the water sector and talk about the bigger picture of what's happening across the UK. At the moment, I'm going to start with a larger piece of work, which is right now there's a data bill going through Parliament. It'll likely go to Royal Assent early next year. And within that, it talks about this idea of smart data. Smart data is a secure and consented sharing of customer data with authorized third parties. But in a nutshell, what it's doing is building on open banking. It's saying, how can we take the successes from the data sharing mechanisms that exist in the banking sector, and that was, a heavy lift, I would say, to get that done. But what we've got now is a completely interoperable banking sector with hundreds of different fintech companies and startups and existing providers all sharing data in a secure and highly scalable way. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we got there and how that is relevant to other sectors. But I just wanted to start there with saying that the part of the implementation of the smart data strategy for the UK is there's now a National Smart Data Council, which includes a very long list of organizations and departments, as you'll see on the right-hand side there. And as of about 4 weeks ago, I'm now co-chairing that council alongside Minister Hollenrake. So I'd say that there's a very clear direction at a national level that we're wanting to take data sharing very seriously indeed. And the starting point for the Smart Data Council has been to look at telecoms, it's looking at energy, and it's looking at SME finance. So you see there, it's not just about consumer data, it's about many types of customer. I'll come on to that. So if we come to the next slide, please. At the heart of the approach here, and this is something that we're bringing into the Stream program here, is a thing called a trust framework. Now, there's lots of new language here, but we're going to try and simplify it. Basically, at one level, the best way to create a data sharing mechanism at a national scale, and scale is really the key word here, is to get people to come together and collaborate on the rules of the game. And that's very much what Stream is already doing. How do we bring together the different industrial stakeholders, commercial actors, with government, obviously it's funded through Ofwat, to define the rules, and then what a trust framework can do, I'll come on to more detail on that in a second, is to codify those rules. But the rules are not just technical. The rules are about data licensing, legal. Typically, data licensing and legal is harder than the technical element. There are policy implications here, but ultimately what we absolutely see across the economy is the need to share data, not just within sectors, but across sectors. So the data has to flow peer-to-peer. So if we come to the next slide here, I'll unpack what's inside a trust framework. So again, on the left-hand side here, you've got the collaboration on the rules, kind of thing that the Stream Consortium is doing. The codification of the rules, however, is an incredibly thin layer. It's a design parameter of a trust framework to do as little as possible. So a trust framework never touches the actual data. What it does is it codifies all the rules. It says, are these organizations part of a trust framework or are they not? If they are, then they're allowed to share data, but also has a directory, not just of the organizations, but it has a directory of the APIs, of the endpoints, if you like, of the data that's being published. So even with open data, where you're publishing things under an open license, there are use cases here for using a trust framework. And what the kind of thing that Stream is doing here, and it's fantastic to see, is saying, what does good look like? What does good data publishing look like? Well, let's take some of those rules and bake them in then to a way of assuring that process and verifying that process. So on the right-hand side here, you'll see the data flows directly from a data source. So that could be the Stream data portal to an application, and that could be anybody in the market who wants to have access to that. But both of those entities can verify that they've agreed the rules of how data can be used and how it should be produced and published and so on. So that extends actually from open data into shared data, data where there's more complex licensing. Whenever you've got a many-to-many relationship, basically, that's where we want to see these kind of frameworks applied. So we'll come to the next slide. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you here just to really kind of set the scene for the broader picture. So here, what we've launched earlier this year is an assurance process for data. And this didn't really exist at any scale in the UK. And in fact, it's in development in most territories around the world. How can you assure that the data is being published to a baseline standard? So once we've got the rules, if you like, collectively defined by the Stream consortia, we can start saying, how do these align with the data assurance process? Have the organization said they're going to publish things in a particular way? And then have they actually done it? So the trust framework process here, the directory can test the APIs are still there and they're doing what they should do. But I'm just going to jump to an example. If you go to the next slide now, in the energy sector, so we've got a parallel program called Open Energy, and there's lots of lessons learned there. It's taken quite a while, but when SSE now have published their data portal, I've just flagged up a couple of things on this screen. This is a screenshot from their live site today. One, you can see the badge saying that this data, the data is assured in a human readable way because there's a badge, but underneath it at the bottom of that screen, you also see there's a machine readable payload. In the metadata, there are definitions related, excuse me, to that data publishing. So that gives an indication as how sensitive the data is. In this case, it's open data, and has it been assured to a baseline level? So this is we're really excited about this, because what we can start to do, and if you look at what Ofgem mandated earlier this year, there's data best practices, there's very similar and parallel things happening between energy and water. And this is really the first time we've got assurable data out into the market. But I'm going to elevate us even more to a much bigger project, just to give a sense of the direction of travel here. So if we come to the next slide, in the UK, we've obviously got a net zero target. And as part of that, all of the banks must create carbon reports for every single one of their customers. And at the moment, they're doing that in a less than ideal way. So we've brought together a whole range of different organizations here. The steering group for this includes the British Business Bank and the Institute of Directors and Department for Energy Security and Net Zero and so on. And the ambition is to start to automate sustainability reporting. And we're starting that process by saying, well, can we get access to smart meter data in the energy sector to start that process of automating sustainability reporting? If we come to the next slide, there's a lot of commercial partners involved in this, ranging from HSBC and Sage to the data communications company who've got all the smart meter data for the national rollout there. So if we come to the next slide, this is where it gets really interesting. I want to give an indication of the kind of direction of travel, because we will, with this program, be coming to the water sector at some point, not immediately, but once we've built the rails for this. To say, how can we get a bit of smart meter data and the generation mix, the carbon intensity of that energy, right the way through the value chain here into a software application like an accounting package to a bank, so the bank can do a personalized loan for an intervention with the SME. So it could be a heat pump or some new technology or some intervention that reduces its carbon footprint. But that's, for me, it's a really good example of the utilization of data once you start making it available has many different applications. And in this case, it's going outside of the sector, it's going into the financial community, and then it's impacting the customers again. In order to do that, it's labyrinthine. We're publishing a 100-page report this week on the work that we've done over the last 4 months, which includes a code change within the Retail Energy Code. So joining the dots here between the policy, the legal, and the technical is right at the heart of our national data infrastructure development. And then just to finish off on the last slide, Ofgem just a month ago published their own approach to building data sharing infrastructure. And they've gone round the houses for quite a number of years now. We designed Open Energy 3 years ago. There's been various different directions of travel, digital spine, the virtual energy system and so on. This year, this has all come together into a cohesive data sharing infrastructure with 3 principles: trust, prepare, and share. And the trust framework approach is right at the heart of that. So I just want to give that bigger picture. This is absolutely front and center and very exciting time for the UK, because we've got national level support, multi-departmental support, multi-regulator support, and some clear and pressing needs to bring all of this information together. So with that, I'll pass back to the team, and hopefully that's given you a bit of a sense of the bigger picture into which Stream is fitting. And as we go forward, we'll want to see the trust framework approach applied to the things that Stream is building.
Cool. Thanks, Gavin. So I'm just going to take you through a description of what Stream it actually is. So Stream's designed to support both individual and collective data publication. And by individual publication, we mean that each water company will publish data independently according to their own regional priorities. Collective publication is where all or a group of companies can come together to publish a cross-company data set. Stream supports both scenarios. It's not a case of either or, it's and. The data being published can also be shared or open in nature. It covers all scenarios in that respect. So if we start with individual company publication of data, individual water companies will be publishing data to support their own regional priorities and the needs of their own ecosystem of users. Individual companies can publish data to their own websites, or they can publish directly to the Stream, because from April next year, Stream will provide a simple means for water companies to publish data and any supporting contextual information directly to the platform. If companies do prefer to publish to their own web, as in the left-hand side of this diagram, then Stream will simply catalogue that it's been published and where it's been published, which will help make that data more findable and accessible without users having to go and search for it on multiple individual websites. We'll also connect to the catalogues of other data sharing infrastructure so that related data sets are also easily searchable through the same interface, even if they're hosted elsewhere. And in this example, we're showing the connection between the DEFRA Data Services platform. And just to take a moment to clarify some terminology, we refer to the scenario on the right where the publisher publishes directly via data upload to Stream as centralised, and where the publisher publishes to their own website and Stream catalogues the fact it's been published as decentralised. Stream's working with individual water companies to agree how to standardise the way data is described, i.e. the data about the data, or also known as metadata, by agreeing to adopt a single industry standard. By doing this, users who want to use data from more than one company will be able to see at a glance whether the individual data sets relate to the same data or the same time frame, for example, or be able to use a metadata search to help filter the results to a data set they're interested in. Stream will also work with the individual water companies to agree and establish a set of standard licenses used to describe whether there are any constraints on the way the data can be used, and data will be presented with this clearly visible at a glance. Users can also search for data sets published by a license type. Stream will put in place tools to help publishing companies decide on which license type is most appropriate based on the use case and the data set. And because we'll standardise on a small range of license type, we minimise the mental friction on the data user in being able to understand whether there are any constraints, and if so, what they are. This will support both open and shared use cases. Stream has already developed a wide ecosystem of potential users and has used this ecosystem to understand their needs and what they're trying to achieve. This has helped identify a pipeline of valuable use cases and associated data sets for the industry to come together to support. Understanding who's seeking to do what with what data, and along with the societal, environmental or economic value associated with it, is critical in ensuring that value is returned from the activity of publishing data. To support ecosystem engagement, Stream will also be launching a website, which will enable users not only to find, understand and access data, but also to respond to challenges the sector might wish to publish on that website, or special interest articles, blogs or vlogs we might also wish to share to help provide more background to data in the sector. There'll also be a community forum so that users can discuss challenges and data and support each other in the use of sector data. Backing this up is a more formal support mechanism for data users where they can ask Stream specific questions about the data or context, or make suggestions about how to make the site or the data or supporting information more useful. We'll also be providing a facility for users to showcase what they've done with the data, not only so that publishing companies can see the value that's been created, but also to inspire other use cases or to help other users take someone else's openly shared work and branch it off into another direction. Helping users not have to start from scratch each time will accelerate the release of new value and unlock new use cases. While we're on the topic of new use cases, users are also able to complete a short form to share their idea for their use case and request the release of associated datasets. The value of the use case will be discussed among the Stream membership, along with any data risks and mitigations that might be needed, and the use case either placed in the prioritisation queue or the request denied. In the case of a request being denied, clear evidence of why it has been denied is provided back. A register of requests and responses will also be kept so that users can easily see whether something has previously been requested and is in the queue, along with where it currently stands in the queue. They can also potentially add new evidence to the use case to increase its priority or see why something has been denied and the reasons why. In the case of the shared data scenario, and let's take a project that's been funded through the Water Breakthrough Challenge as an example, there may be a need to share specific data between specific partners, but nobody else. At the moment, each initiative has to stand up its own data sharing infrastructure and legal agreements, and this is a resource and cost burden that Stream seeks to remove so that projects and initiatives can focus their time and effort on delivering value. At its heart, Stream provides for this scenario through access rights, which can be applied at a very fine grain if necessary, depending on the use case and the dataset. So publishers are able to publish a dataset to a defined set of authorised users and nobody else. These users have to register with the platform so that credentials can be verified and access granted according to the permissions set by the publisher. We believe just this one feature will prove invaluable for projects when data sharing is necessary. It'll also enable companies to routinely publish more sensitive data with trusted third parties, again taking the strain out of having to stand up and maintain separate data sharing infrastructure. Data shared in this way can either be in the centralised mode or the decentralised mode. So that's an overview of the features of Stream, but there's more to Stream than the processes and technology that it will provide to publishers and users. Stream is also a community in itself. The member companies work together and support each other in the business of publishing data. The sharing of best practice is normal practice, and this means the sector learns how to generate value from data publication much faster, safer, and more cost effectively, which is a good thing for both individual companies and their bill-paying customers. So if we go back to where we started with individual companies publishing data according to their own priorities, we can also see where the Stream community can support each other. Within the Stream community, there's shared visibility over individual company publication pipelines, and this means the opportunity to publish data collectively is spotted early. This enables the water companies in question to work together to agree to publish data in a way that easily facilitates the joining up of that data across company boundaries. As many companies or as few companies can choose to take part in this activity depending on their own priorities, but they know that if they choose to publish that particular data at a later date, they can easily access the agreed schema so that they can publish in a way that conforms to the previously agreed standard. Member companies also share how data they've published has generated value so that other companies have the opportunity to judge whether they also wish to publish the same data and take advantage of the insight or model or service that's been created. This then provides a neat accelerator to value and helps successful initiatives scale. The underlying philosophy, echoing what Gavin just said, for Stream is that individually we might go fast, but together we go further. I'm now going to hand over to Andrew to take us through the history of how we've got here and the next steps.
Thanks, Melissa. That was a really good overview of what we're hoping to achieve. So what I'm going to take you through now is a little bit about the history of Stream, sort of where we've come from, and Carly kind of alluded to this at the start. So if you just want to bring up the timeline, we'll start taking you through kind of where we've got to and some of the achievements that we've got along the way. So as Carly said right in her opening remarks, we came together back in 2020, right at the start of lockdown, and had, you know, just a few interested water companies that wanted to know, is there something worth going at here about open data? And we kind of started with two key questions. One of those is, what are the benefits for open data within the water sector? And the other one was, if we are going to address open data, are we better doing it together rather than each company doing this as a project in their own right? And I guess the first one of those, we quite quickly realised that there was a real appetite for open data in the sector. We saw the benefits it brought to other sectors in terms of transparency and trust, but also as that catalyst for innovation. So we felt it was definitely something worth going at. We also felt there were huge benefits in working together. Some of that's just about the efficiency of not all having to do those same steps. But it also drives far better collaboration on these projects. We're all working on very similar challenges within the water sector, so it made a lot of sense to work together on open data. But the other factor is a lot of the challenges we have in the water sector, the failures that we have within our assets and, you know, and the infrastructure that we run, happens pretty rarely. So we need to make sure that we, you know, with a bigger pool of data, you've got more chance to spot some of those trends, those kind of needles in a haystack that you're looking for within data, are much easier once you pool that data at a national level than within an individual company. So we absolutely recognised there was some huge benefits in collaborating around open data. So then we went, okay, what next? How do we progress this? How do we start driving this forward? So we worked together to come up with a strategy and a delivery plan that we could work with, and brought some partners on board to help us work with that. We identified that the Ofwat Innovation Fund was a potential route that would give us that funding to get us over the line. Up to this point, it had been best endeavours of people within water companies, you know, giving up a bit of their time alongside their day job because they were passionate about the project. But we realised to do this and to deliver this at scale, we did need a bit of funding behind us. So we applied to the Ofwat Innovation Fund. Took a little while. We weren't successful first time, but we kind of kept at it, took the feedback on board, resubmitted, and then in May of last year, we got the funding for our blueprint phase. So that really enabled us to accelerate the work that we were doing and really get in depth of exactly how we would go about delivering this, and all those components that Melissa's just outlined. We kind of worked those through as part of the blueprint, went which are the things that are really key for us. How can we do this quite efficiently and quite quickly? So we came up with that blueprint, and then went back to Ofwat to get the funding for the delivery phase. And then in summer of this year, we were announced the winner of the Breakthrough Innovation Challenge for the delivery phase. So that's fantastic. We've kind of done all this work. It's all been kind of theory up to this point. Now, you know, the funding's come through, so August of this year, absolutely, we've got to hit the ground running here. We've really got to, you know, get everyone back up to speed, because there's a bit of a lull when between the funding rounds, and really sort of kick on and start working with those pretty challenging targets that we've got. First one of those is to get our first data published by December of this year. So, you know, in a few weeks' time. We're aiming to get our first data sets published. That's not going to be on the Enduring platform. We are doing this just to kind of test the process and mechanics of doing this, getting the standards agreed and getting data sets published. And Jess will give a little bit more information about the progress we've made on that. And that's about learning as much as we can from that MVP work, but with a view to then inform our day one service, which will be launched from April of next year. So that will be bringing the Enduring platform online and starting to get into that routine of regularly publishing data sets that Melissa's outlined. And a view that where we want to get to is to get to a real sort of steady state where this just becomes business as usual as part of the water sector. and when that Ofwat funding runs out, that we're running a kind of efficient process. You know, we're not this sort of kind of huge organisation that takes lots of time and effort and money to run. We want this to be just sort of built into the water company's business as usual process of getting data sets released. And then on the bottom part of the slide, I've just put a few illustrations of some of the things that we've done so far. So just coming up with an ecosystem map of people who'd be interested or potential would want to collaborate within water sector data. Some of the people we've reached out to during blueprint phase, you know, speaking at events like Utility Week Live to, again, just get the message out there. Working very closely on the Open Data Forum, which is about the water sector's response to Ofwat's request for open data. Coming up with a data spectrum that helps visualize what that means for the water sector. So this is based on work that the Open Data Institute have done within other sectors, giving some real world examples of what we class as fully open data, which data sets we see as being shared, and which data sets are more towards that closed side of things. And then we've started the work to see what we think those features and user experience would look like with the platform. So you can see some mock-up wireframes there for what the potential platform could look like, and then a view of the team where we came together with a number of the partners in person a few weeks ago. So if we just want to move on to the next slide, I'll give a little bit more information about who we are within this collaboration. So we've grown and grown across that time from a small group of water companies back in 2020 to gradually bring more and more partners on board. You know, Jez mentioned right at the start the list of companies, so I'll not read everyone's name out, but you can see the logos there. And we did bring in very recently South Staffs and Affinity, and we are very keen, you know, if other water companies are keen to get involved. Absolutely, you know, we're very keen to make sure that, you know, we cover as much of the sector as possible, and we have a you know, reasonably efficient process that's agreed with Ofwat for bringing additional members in. The partners that we've got, again, I thought it's worth just giving a bit of information about the partners that we've brought in. So we have SEER partners who have got experience from other sectors and are really helping us with our project management function, and you'll hear from Jess next about some of the work they do and just to help keep us on track, and they've been absolutely fantastic. We've got the Open Data Institute, who are really, you know, bringing that that sort of view of best practice from other sectors and what's the best way to approach open data and what are the areas we should be focusing on. We've got AMI, which have just helped bolster those data science and data engineering skills and give us a kind of central team to work on bringing those data sets together, agreeing the standards, and getting those data sets prepared for publication. We've got Costain and their partner Pinsent Masons, who are really helping us with all things legal. So making sure we get those data sharing agreements correctly, looking at the structure of Stream and how we are set up, and giving us a lot of help and guidance to make sure that we're set up in the right way now and doing things correctly for these first few data sets, but also that we set up the correct way for the enduring kind of way we want to operate in the future. I've got Icebreaker One, and you heard from Gavin there. We've had some fantastic support from them. They really helped us to get our governance structure right. And again, you'll hear a little bit more in the slides that Jess goes through to look at how we manage that steering group and how we help to build that data sharing infrastructure. And we've got Corson Kroger, who've helped us with the elements of change within water companies, because open data will be a really big change for the water sector. And we've got, you know, really good representation from lots of water companies, but we need to make sure that message gets through to the right people at the water companies, so we can do everything we can to take advantage of the progress that's being made in this area. And we've also included on there a few of those wider stakeholders that we've been speaking to and working with. We didn't have space to put every logo for every company we've worked with. There's been, you know, a huge number there, but obviously working very closely with regulators, with government departments, and sector-wide bodies, as well as lots of individual companies who've got a stake in the water sector. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview of the history of Stream and who's involved. So I'll now pass over to Jess. I'll also just remind you that if you do have any questions, you know, you can put those in the chat and we'll come to those a little bit later. So over to Jess.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. So now I'll look to take you through the delivery approach that we've adopted on Stream, some of our key milestones and what you can expect to see from us in the coming months, and also a bit of insight into the ways of working and how we've mobilised over the last 6 months. So if I can just get the next slide, please. Thank you. So the current phase on Stream is what we've termed implementation phase. And this is really all about delivery. So this is moving from the great work that's been delivered to date. So some of what Andrew just spoke through, including notably the blueprint phase, but also all of the previous work delivered since 2020. And it's about taking all of that work and moving into tangible delivery and outcomes, and really focusing on bringing the vision, which we've all collectively signed up to life. So it's a really exciting phase on the programme and in the history and life of Stream. So we'll look to achieve this by delivering 2 key milestones within our first 10 months of delivery. So this will be both an MVP, so our minimum viable product, and then our industrialized platform and live service in April of 2024. And these 2 key delivery milestones really line up with the objectives that we set out in our bid submission to the Innovation Fund. So that was both to release the first datasets on Stream by December 2023. And this was always intended to be a soft launch, but really making the first open datasets available and showing that we are able to publish standardized datasets covering multiple water companies. And then the second key objective in that bid was the formal launch of Stream in April 2024, where we'd be looking to release additional datasets. We made the decision to deliver an MVP, despite knowing that we wouldn't have procured our enduring platform by this point. And I think everyone on the programme, I hope everyone on the programme would agree that this was a really critical decision for us. And one that's been really positive, because what it's enabled us to do is learn by doing, which I think is a really key principle of how we operate on Stream, and also to uncover a huge amount of learnings, both on the process side, also in terms of some of our technology requirements, and really critically just remove some of the blockers that would have had or could have had the potential to derail us for our day 1 launch. So as you can see at the bottom of the slide, we've split this implementation phase into kind of 3 key time horizons. So our MVP, our day 1 service, and then the final phase, which we refer to as embed and sustain. So I just want to take you through and just break down what we're trying to achieve in each of these phases. So our MVP, oh, sorry, if I can just stay on the last one. Perfect, thank you. So our MVP focuses on releasing data that is relatively low risk and no complexity. We really wanted to make sure that we got some data out there within the first 6 months of running this phase, and to be able to demonstrate progress both internally to our water company members, but also externally to a huge range of stakeholders that we've engaged with and that also have interest in this programme. Whilst we knew that we wouldn't have the full platform functionality, it was really always our intention to use the MVP to inform some of those requirements for day 1. So both in terms of technical requirements, but also some wider thinking and implications around our future operating model. And there's also been a huge amount that we're delivering in our MVP that will be carried through into our day 1 service. So things like our legal agreements, the data sets themselves, and also some work that's been delivered on the user experience side. And just a final critical point on the MVP is it's really enabled us to understand how to best work with the water companies, how to work collaboratively through workshops, and also trying to learn kind of the right level of communication on this programme between the huge range of stakeholders that are involved. So our day one service, by comparison, will use the Procured platform, and a key objective here is to take a use case led approach. So whereas in MVP, we're really focused on making sure we can publish some data, for our day one, we want to look to release more complex data sets that also enable high value use cases. After day one, we'll move into the final phase, embed and sustain. And the key point here, or the key objective, is to make sure that after this, well, within this 2-year period of Ofwat funding, that we set Stream up to be sustainable and to have a sustainable future. So one of the critical objectives for this phase will be to support the water companies in being able to take on some of the activities that are currently being delivered by the project partners. And there will also be a mixture of both developmental and operational activities during this period. So developmental refers to where we are still building and designing, because the first 2 phases only get us up to the first 10 months. So we know that there will still be work in terms of platform enhancements, the future business model, continual review of the operating model as we add more as we add more features onto the platform, and also a big focus in this period on the community strategy component. And then operational activities is where we have processes that we've designed in these first 2 phases of implementation. And this is really about cranking the handle and continuing to carry out those processes. So those are things like reviewing and developing the use case backlog, and also dataset preparation and publishing. So if I can go to the next slide, please. We wanted to share with you what data we're looking to release in both of these launches. So for MVP, as mentioned, we looked at data sets that were relatively low risk and no complexity. We wanted them to be data sets that we could get out into the public domain relatively quickly, but of course safely. And a really good starting point for that was looking at data sets which are already commonly requested data through EIR requests. So the 3 data sets that we'll be publishing in December of this year are firstly the annual performance report, the APR tables. Stream will be publishing data from the performance summary section, and this will be in a standardized format and available to download per individual water company. We'll also be publishing water company boundaries, and this was seen as a really important foundational data set for Stream, and it also enables us to publish data in a different format and test that learning as well. And then the final data set that we'll be publishing is domestic water quality. So this will show location and measured levels of determinants for samples taken at customer taps. And this has been mapped to LSOAs, so lower layer super output area, which is a geographic hierarchy designed to improve the reporting of small area statistics. And this was to ensure that we avoid any concerns around that data being identifiable. And it was a really good learning with the water companies, some of who hadn't used that hierarchy previously. Our day one service will focus on the data sets on the right-hand side. So these focus much more on high value and high priority use cases. We wanted to explore data sets that demonstrate additional complexity, because it's really important in this 2-year period that we try as many different types of data sets as possible to increase that learning within the Stream community. So you can see here we'll be publishing water consumption data, and then the other 3 use cases that you can see here are currently going through our feasibility assessments and schema design workshops. So those are pollution event data, having strong links to the National Environment Hub here, raw water storage levels, and also leakage nightline data. If I can just move to the next slide, please. So the final thing that we wanted to share with you today is a bit more about our ways of working and how we've ensured that collaboration sits at the heart of everything we're trying to achieve on this programme. This has been really important, as I'm sure you can imagine, when we have 13 water company members and also a range of project partners working on the programme as well. So on the left-hand side of this, appreciate it's quite small, but you can see the governance structure that we're currently operating on the programme. And I just wanted to call out a few key things about this structure and how it's informed our ways of working. So we have a steering group, which includes water company members who have voting rights and a number of expert advisors and also observers. And the steering group is the forum where all formal decision-making on the programme takes place. We currently also have 2 advisory groups operating. So one of those is focused on market and user needs, and the other one is focused on technical requirements and operating model. These advisory groups include water company members, they include the project partners, but really critically, they include external stakeholders as well. And we found it really valuable on this programme to bring external stakeholders into the conversation in these forums. It's enabled us to learn from best practice. It's enabled us to look into what's been achieved in adjacent sectors and what we can adopt and pick up from that. It's enabled to keep us on track and to have an external voice of reason to kind of question or challenge in an open forum some of the work that we're delivering. And it's also enabled us to really keep the user front in mind in our thinking and also in our delivery. So you can see at the bottom of this, we've also got our delivery work streams, and these are being currently led by the project partners, but working very closely and collaboratively with our water company members. And one of, well, I guess 2 principles that we've adopted here are ensuring that we're working as one team throughout. And that definitely has its challenges. You can see the number of organisations at the bottom. But one way we've achieved that is to continually come back to our shared vision and why we're all here and the motivations for that. And another key principle that we adopt is working in the open, which seems obvious on an open data project, but it's been important to constantly remind ourselves to share work in progress, to get builds, to invite different people into the conversation across the water companies and the project partners, and make sure that we're incorporating those broad perspectives throughout. So hopefully that's given you an overview as to what we are currently delivering, what you can expect, and also how we are operating on the programme. So at this point, I'll hand over back to Leah.
Thank you, Jess, and thanks to everyone so far for your input with today's showcase. So we're just going to go to a quick 15-minute break now. So the time is currently 10:55, so we'll be returning at 11:10 exactly, ready to continue with the showcase and question and answers. Thanks, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, and I think it's time to hand back off to Melissa to go through some of the lessons learned from the project. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Leah. So I'm going to take you through some lessons learned. So we collated these lessons learned from the community of Stream members and the partners recently for the purposes of documenting them to share on this session today. So I'll take you through each of them and encourage my colleagues to chip in. So the first one that we learned was that securing funding might not be as straightforward as you think it's going to be. So Andrew talked about the time frame since April 2020, and Out of the 43 months we've been discussing or formed as Stream, 35 of those have been spent applying for or waiting for funding. So it's been a bit of a tenacity and endurance test, but also a testament to the commitment to the vision and the desire to collaborate among the Stream membership. Underestimating the change challenge is probably a common lesson learned, I would say, probably for many projects. But in particular, in relation to open data, context shifts since April 2020 can make that harder. So obviously, when we started the conversation about open data back in 2020, we didn't have the media storm that we have now around spills to the environment, river water quality, etc. So actually those context shifts that happen and are outside of the control of an initiative can actually make that change challenge a little bit harder. So understanding that is critical. When to communicate to who is also been a challenge. It's hard to communicate when you cannot, when the clarity only materialises when you actually start investing time and resources to put some meat on the bones of the theory. And so that's been a particular challenge, about not wanting to communicate too soon and then a big delay with actually having something concrete to be able to show and share. Honesty, transparency and open communication are critical, obviously fundamental to collaboration. But it's really important to, going back to the change challenge, to understand the levels of varying levels of ambition, capability and capacity in the membership. We have to work hard to understand that and create an environment where that can be shared, but also to create a culture of support and a desire to succeed together. Developing human connections, so making sure we understand preferred ways of working and a shared vision of what we're all trying to achieve. So the value of, Andrew referred to the partner day that we had was invaluable, particularly when you were working remotely. Developing those human connections and deep relationships is perhaps a little bit harder. So focusing and spending time on developing the understanding at a human level and the shared vision is absolutely critical. So kickoffs and effective onboarding process is something that we've learnt has been useful. Providing effective update and communication and update channels and engagement channels. So not everybody can attend every meeting, so finding ways to make that as easy as possible to keep up to speed, keep engaged, keep involved, whilst not necessarily expecting everybody to attend every meeting. Some of the member companies we're working with have pretty thin on the ground with resources. So it's finding ways to maintain engagement without overloading diaries with meetings. Creating a clear and shared vision and not assuming that actually exists has been really important, because there's going to be good days and bad days, and it's on those bad days that it's important to remember why we're doing this. So having that clear vision in mind and shared across the membership has been really important. One of the lessons learned was actually when we started and we bid for the funding, as Andrew described earlier, initially, we obviously sought to engage water companies who wanted to get on board with Stream at the outset. But actually providing multiple opportunities to come on board throughout that period, we probably didn't realise that in the early days that we could actually bring new partners on board, but we managed to find a way to do that. So providing many opportunities for companies to come on board as and when they're ready to come on board has been really important. So we don't always get the sequencing right, but we strive to learn through doing. There's no better way to learn than actually doing stuff and being prepared to look back and look at what could be improved the next time we do that thing or do it in a different order. So totally invaluable, actually, active learning. Link back to the Change Challenge, senior or exec level sponsorship for being a member of Stream is absolutely critical. It's super hard for companies without this backing from the senior level sponsorship. The power of collaboration and ensuring all those that are involved can have a say. So Jess talked about how we've brought additional voices into the initiative from outside of the water sector through the steering groups and through the advisory groups. Really important that we bring as many informed voices into the discussion as possible. It just makes sure that we can take advantage of a considerable knowledge and an experience pool from people within the sector and outside of the sector. And then, you know, collaboration requires a lot of input. Like any relationship, it takes work and continuous engagement and a conversation. And that's about it, unless there's any others from the Stream membership team who would like to add to any of those.
I'm happy to chip in if you want. Just want to build on kind of, I think, you know, one of the slides that I shared, which I think's been really important, is around bringing people into the project who've worked within other sectors and have that level of experience. I think there's no way we would have got to such a good outcome without bringing that expertise from outside the sector in. You know, if we went in this thinking, oh, we know best, we know water data, we can do this and just kind of plough ahead and go on our own, I think would have definitely struggled and not made as quick progress as we've been able to. So I think, you know, bringing in that outside expertise for the areas and bringing the right people in with the right attitude as well. I think the partners that we've got are absolutely fantastic, and the right individuals within those who are passionate about the project. So they've really brought energy, but as well as that knowledge from what's happened within those other sectors, and just that level of commitment that we've got from the partners we've brought on board, I think, has been really refreshing. There's you know, I've been involved in quite a few sort of technology projects over the last sort of 5 or 10 years, and the level of engagement we've got from the partners on this, I think, has been really sort of good to see, that they are really passionate about wanting to do this for the right reasons, about, you know, moving the sector forward and, you know, enabling that innovation, enabling that openness and transparency, and really seeing the transformative impact this could have. So I think, you know, absolutely, if people are doing projects, I think making sure you find the right partners, and you know, bringing additional partners in as well. I think, you know, as we've grown, we've seen there were other people out there that could help us, and we've brought those in to work alongside us. So yeah, definitely sort of a key learning point is yeah, make sure you get the right partners, because you can't do this just within the water companies themselves.
I was just going to add something which I think it's slightly tangential, Andrew, to the point you just made, but to me there's definitely been something about the sense of, I would say it's ambiguity that we have, because this isn't something that has been delivered in the water sector before, and there's a huge amount of best practice and lessons learned from other sectors which we've been so eager to adopt. But I think it's been really important to have a culture on this project where we know we might not have all the answers, and we know there might be times where we have to fail fast to move on and learn from it. So I think just being comfortable operating in that space, and everyone being on the same page with that as well.
Thank you. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to, I think it's Q&A now.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you everyone from Stream for a brilliant showcase so far. So we've had a few really good questions in the chat. I think Gavin and Andrew have answered a couple, but I'm going to throw them out there anyway, just in case anybody likes to expand on the points made so far. So starting off with a question from Steve. Is one of the topics being considered to share our licence to operate /statutory areas? We know that at the borders there could be inconsistencies between who is billing, who owns the pipework connected to, and the area polygon that was redigitized by Ofwat in 2020/21.
Do you want me to take that one? So
yeah.
I think, you know, as Jess mentioned, that is absolutely one that we've identified is a really useful foundational data set, and one we will be releasing in December as part of the MVP. We can't guarantee it's perfect, you know, and you know, as alluded to the question, I think getting it out there and having that route for people to feed back any of those issues. And yes, there are inconsistencies between the operating area for water, the operating area for wastewater. I mean, a lot of that is geography. Typically, both systems run downhill, so you don't end up with the same boundary for water and wastewater. So, you know, we'll definitely be keen to sort of take that feedback on board, but absolutely we wanted to get that out there as a foundational data set, so it can be used alongside others. It can be used for visualization purposes. It can be used for identifying which water companies to get in touch with. And I think most water companies are pretty comfortable with the fact that occasionally you get a query from someone that's actually need to be redirected to a neighbouring company, and we're pretty happy to deal with that. But if we can help and get those borders more accurate by sharing them and getting more people collaborating, I think that's something we'll see a lot with data sets. That data quality will improve by having more eyes on it and having people coming back and feeding back with, actually, I think this bit's a bit wrong. Can you fix it? You know, water companies trying to do that themselves is going to be a huge challenge, because, you know, everyone's got a day job. But if people are actually feeding back enhancements to data across all of our data sets, I think it's only going to be good for data quality and integrity within the sector.
Brilliant, thank you, Andrew. And Melissa, did you want to add anything, or are you quite happy with that?
No, as Andrew said, we felt it was one of those foundational data sets, so important to get out there off the bat.
Absolutely, perfect. So moving on to a question from Lisa, who says, hi Gavin, has a trust framework been designed, or are you advising individual water boards to seek out their own guidance? So I think that one's for Gavin, but if anybody wants to. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I think this is really worth expanding on. Again, trust frameworks are not things that individual companies do. It's something that's very much a collective action drive, and Stream is extremely well positioned as an existing cross-industry coalition to work on them. I think the key thing that we're seeing nationally and internationally, but let's just talk about the UK for now, is that as the data maturity of sectors moves forwards, we see an evolution from people building individual data silos where they try and put all the data in one place. So obviously it's a starting point for part of Stream, but we've always said, you know, that there's a roadmap in the mix of this. But if we just learn from what's happened in other sectors, and people have spent millions on developing these kind of things, is that over time, the governance piece needs to be detached. The implementation of governance through an independent body of some kind, and those bodies can vary in their architecture, detached from where the data is. So the governance sits separately, and the implementation of governance sits separately to where the data sits. And so we see this in every sector at different stages of maturity. But the best way to design them is together. And it's, you know, it's very much to Melissa's earlier point of, like, you know, if we want to go far, we've got to do this together. And more recently, we've invited Ofwat in as observers to the steering group, precisely for that reason. A massive lesson learned from my point of view in co-chairing Stream and then co-chairing Open Energy, which I'm still running, is right from the beginning of Open Energy, we invited Ofgem, well, BEIS at the time, now DESNZ, and Innovate UK as observers to the process, because the policymakers are also struggling with this. You know, it's like, what needs to be regulated? What do all the words mean? You know, all of the journey that we're going on here as the sector, the government's going on as well, right? And the more we can just involve everyone in the conversations, it helps everyone orient and work out what the things are. And I can't overstate how early we are on this journey. It's massive progress, and Stream's doing great work here, and we're at the beginning of a journey. And I look at open banking. You know, we originally designed open banking in 2015, and I still think it's starting. You know, there's millions of people using it, but it's still at the big. In terms of where the innovation's coming, there are many unicorns in the fintech sector. The UK is leading the world in the fintech space, certainly way ahead of Europe on many dimensions. And a lot of that is down to open banking. And so when we look at where's the innovation going to be stimulated from, all of the challenges that we're talking about here, we're still at early stages. So, but getting the foundations right has to be a collaborative process, and it's quite hard, as Melissa was saying.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so next question is from Rachel. One of the key drivers for open banking was the CMA and UK government mandating 9 of the largest banks to implement common standards for open banking. Do you foresee a similar mandate being required in the water industry as part of this initiative?
Don't know. Let's see. I think what we've learned as well through the work on open energy was the first non-financial sector to try and do a trust framework, and we started that with a lot of government backing from UKRI and from BEIS at the time as well. Industry then lent in. Obviously, there was a little bit of political, should we call it, instability in the middle of it, which sort of delayed things. But we've seen Ofgem now move quite rapidly this year. They did their determination in January, saying you've got to have a data portal, and then the more recent one around the data sharing infrastructure. So I think the kind of rails are sort of there. I've been talking with many regulators about at what point and where should we think about the potential for regulation, but it's the potential for it, and I really I can't overstate this. It helped with the implementation of open banking in New Zealand. It was delivered through a trade association. We actually spun up a new non-profit. You'll notice a pattern there with what I'm doing with Icebreaker. But we spun up a new non-profit which is based in New Zealand that actually implements open banking for the industry. However, what happened there is they went straight out the gate. They got about 70% of the market on boards, but they didn't get 100% of the actors on board. And that led to a bit of friction and so on. So they've actually gone back to government and say, we'd quite like you to regulate this bit. But that's been based on their kind of lived experience of it. So there's lots of different ways of doing this. Open banking is now in 80 countries. And there's lots of different ways of getting there. They all end up in pretty much the same place. And so the lesson learned here, I think that we can learn from the tens of millions that other people have spent and say, like, let's shortcut some of the things. There are some known knowns in here. There's some known unknowns, and there's some new things. But really, it's all about that collaborative top part to say, how can we look at all of this cohesively? And there may well be a need for regulation in certain areas. But to the benefit of everybody, I think is the key. And some of the banks were kicking and screaming at the beginning of open banking, but actually now it's just generating value for everybody. So hopefully that helps.
Fabulous.
Does that address the question? I don't know if
yeah, maybe I can just add just a little bit from some of the feedback that we've had directly from Ofwat on this, and we have been engaging with them right from the start and continue to do on a regular basis. And I think at the moment that their feeling is they are keen for this to be industry-led. They don't want it to be a kind of enforced thing, because then it becomes an issue of people doing open data just for compliance, not to stimulate innovation, not for openness and transparency. They do it just as a compliance thing, and they're really keen that the progress we've made is kind of given that opportunity to be industry-led. However, they have said that if they don't see the progress, then they have routes, whether that becomes a license condition, to kind of enforce that if progress is not made. And I think we really support that. I think that's absolutely the right approach to give the sector the opportunity to kind of do things in the right way, try and use it as a stimulator for innovation, try and use that as a way to engage with people that want to use our data, to prioritize the data sets that are going to add most value and release them in a way that delivers the most value, rather than going down to the kind of lowest common denominator of you must release this, every 12 months and, in a PDF format on a website, which is not really going to do the sort of the level of innovation that we're hoping to achieve. But I think those conversations will continue, and I think also the regulators themselves are still getting their heads around this. They're getting their heads around how to stimulate open data within the sector, but they're also getting their heads around how to publish their own data sets openly, and we're working with them on that so they can learn from the work we've done so far as well.
Great, thanks, Sandra. And just to maybe one thing to add, to tie it back into primary legislation that's going through now in the data bill. It talks about trust frameworks in that context. One of the lessons learned, and it's still early days, I want to frame all of this, we're still at the foothills of a lot of this, but creating an alignment around data rights, in particular between how we treat citizen data and how we treat business data, is an incredibly good thing to do. This is kind of emerging through a lot of our work. In the consumer context, we talk about consent. In the business context, we talk about permission. So how do we get permission flowing through this system? How do we have provenance and assurability of the data? These are, all things that the data community have talked about for a long time, but we haven't had to instrument it and implement it at national scale. So I think what we'll see as we go forwards, obviously I can't speak on behalf of government here, but with my role as co-chair of the Smart Data Council, there is a very strong strategic reason why we'd want to see a lot of alignment between the way that we're dealing with consumer data and business data, frankly, because it will just save everybody time and money, but will increase interoperability, will reduce liability. That's a really critical component of a trust framework approach. And we cement data rights at the heart of how data can be shared and for what purpose. So all of these pieces, I think, are really relevant, but it is coming through that primary legislation piece. It will get turned into secondary legislation. Bits of it will get turned into regulation as we go forward. But collaborations like Stream are critical to working out what the questions are.
Perfect. Thank you, Gavin, and Andrew as well for answering that question. So the next question is from Catherine, and she says, regarding the domestic water quality, is this based purely on testing provided by the individual water companies?
Yes, it's samples taken at customer taps, so for regulatory purposes, yeah.
Perfect. And the next question from Matt. How about river water quality and bathing water quality? All already publicly available and crucial, but forgotten data due to media hysteria on storm overflow discharges.
Yes, I believe it is in the, I'm going to defer to Jess here, but I believe it's in the pipeline somewhere. Some of it is will be surfaced, I think, with one of the shortlisted use cases around pollution, I think.
Yeah, so these were all ones that came into the forefront when we were prioritising the MVP data sets, but were seen as potentially a bit too complex to be in the first release. But we have captured these in our backlog as well. So most notably, Melissa, through the one you just mentioned, through the pollution event data.
Perfect. Thank you, Jess and Melissa. So next question, Adrian has asked, will datasets like water quality at LSOA be described in a manner that helps unfamiliar users understand that LSOA boundaries won't match distribution network / hydraulic boundaries for the most part, hence care needed with use and comparisons?
Yeah, I think this is all in the supporting information that goes with the dataset itself. If we're using definitions and terms, then we have to explain what they mean. So yeah, providing supporting information and contextual information about the data is really important to help the ecosystem of users.
Yeah, if I can just come in on that and just explain a little bit behind those kind of chosen areas. So those areas are chosen because there's quite a lot of open data already released with that as a location identifier, including lots of census information, demographic information, things like that. It's a very good way to give some location information to a relatively, limited number of households without identifying any particular individuals or individual households, to make sure that we comply with GDPR regulations. We looked at a few different options for this, and we're very keen to get feedback from users on if that is a useful thing. We went with it because there's a number of other open data sets that are already using that. But as the question mentioned, it absolutely does not align perfectly with boundaries. In a lot of cases it does, because settlements tend to be within single areas, but it's absolutely not 100%. And there will be ones where you end up with different samples taken from the same LSOA area, which are fed from completely different sources. So it's not going to be fully representative. But I think looking at a national level, those types of anomalies will be quite rare. In most cases, it will be quite representative. But again, really keen for people to get hands-on with the data, find out if that is useful. If they'd prefer a different way to anonymize that location. It's very difficult to anonymize the location without hitting that issue where boundaries are, because you may occasionally have a single property that would be identifiable because it's close to a boundary between water companies. So we do need to think carefully about a way to do that maintains that level of anonymization. So but definitely keen to get feedback from users on if this is a really good one, if we should publish other data sets using this as a geographic identifier, or whether there's other things that people would prefer, such as maybe identifying the 1 kilometre grid square that the property resides in, or some other way to anonymize it. But just being aware that we need to make sure that we're compliant with GDPR.
Yeah, and I think when we publish common data sets, it's thinking about interoperability, as Andrew said. LSOA there are other data sets that people might wish to join with this data, and thinking about what the standard is against which we'll publish, just to make sure that we are enabling people to join up data sets that live outside of the water sector. It's absolutely critical.
Perfect, thanks both. And just a quick question from Tom. Does Stream envision opening up data sets, i.e. water consumption data, to external industry partners?
Absolutely. If the use case makes sense and we can justify it, obviously if it's individual property level, we need to make sure that we're doing that in the right way, and we're doing that if it is going to be released at an individual property level, we need to comply with those GDPR regulations, so making sure it is to the benefit of that individual householder and not to the detriment of that householder. And we understand that we are going to see some benefits from doing that, and we're looking at different ways we could anonymize individual household consumption to enable us to publish it in a more open way. But yes, absolutely, we are keen to work with both fully open data, but also shared data that maybe couldn't be published in that way, and definitely very keen to work with other people that have got potentially innovative projects that are using these data sets.
Perfect, thanks Andrew. Okay, next question. So Rebecca has asked, we've recently joined Stream and I'm keen to dive in further. How can I get actively involved, and how do I leverage Stream to guide and support me in opening up our company's data? I'm eager to tap into the benefits and make a real impact. Any advice on where to start would be greatly appreciated.
If you let us know which company you are from, we can let you connect you with your lead representative from your company.
Yeah, I also added a link to the chat, just with a link to our LinkedIn page, which is just a really good way to get updates. So, most weeks we're sharing updates on progress we make, opportunities to collaborate with us or feed into our strategies, feed into that. Things like the backlog of use cases was driven from that engagement with other people, and people have the opportunity to feed into that. We've also shared our blueprint document on there, so people can access the blueprint and have a read through kind of what it is we're proposing to do and why. So we have lots of opportunities there for people to get involved, and we also have regular calls where we're more than happy to have multiple representatives from companies along with those calls. And if we get added to the distribution list for those, then we can also watch the playbacks and get the emails and things. So yeah, lots of ways to get involved. And yeah, really keen to have, you know, more passionate people about open data working with us.
Perfect. Just as an FYI, I think Gavin has just had to drop off for another meeting. So our question answer panel is down to 3. Perfect.
Yeah.
So
Good
the
to see
next,
everyone. Good conversation. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, sorry, I had to jump off.
thank you for joining us, Gavin. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Perfect. So the next question is from William asking, have the team engaged with the Met Office climate data? Looking at the April release data sets, having temperature, rainfall, soil moisture data would be really useful.
Well, I think this comes back to if there are already published data sets available, we can connect, we can reference, effectively index and catalogue those as data sets we think that people may also find useful. So that's one way of making those data sets more visible. And certainly we were working with other entities like the Environment Agency in that way. So I think that's one way we can do it. Andrew, I don't know whether you have anything to add.
We absolutely want to make sure that data sets we've got are interoperable with other published data sets, such as the Met Office. So it has such a big impact on us, especially when you're talking about the environmental data sets that we're looking at as part of our day 1 release for April. Making sure we can tie up and know what the weather was like at the time of any of these events is absolutely key for understanding, you know, the cause, the likely impact of any of these issues. So yeah, there's huge overlaps between what's happening with the weather. And I guess the other thing just to mention, since we're talking about the Met Office data, is the impact that climate change is having on the sector, which I think, you know, everyone in the water sector will be seeing this firsthand, that, you know, we're really seeing the impact of climate change in our day-to-day operations, with both, you know, the more severe droughts and water resource issues, and also the more severe storms that are causing impacts on the wastewater system. And I think, you know, understanding these and understanding the impact they're having on the systems will allow us to optimize the systems that we've got at the moment, identify, you know, best practice and how to cope with these things. So I think it's definitely an area where understanding weather data and water sector data together is going to be really useful for us to find those insights to help us cope with the changing climate.
Thank you very much. And just a quick question, I think, from Catherine, which relates to sort of the earlier one, really. But they'd like to know, what is the best place to learn more about Stream if you're not a water company but have adjacent data?
Again, I would suggest probably the LinkedIn channel is the best sort of primary way to interact with us. And that's where we're publishing most of our updates. So as and when data sets are published, we'll be shouting about it on there. And then hopefully when we get the Enduring platform in place from April of next year, we'll have some kind of community features within that platform as well to enable people to get more in depth about particular data sets and particular work they're doing on those.
Perfect, thank you. And then Adam has just asked, do you see Stream as the way to publish regulatory requirements or data behind them, e.g. PR tables, WRMP tables, and also the associated documents?
Yeah, so this is where we're working closely with the regulators, because if we can publish that data for a purpose of a regulatory purpose, then we can also choose to make that data also publicly available or in a shared way. So we are having exactly that discussion with Ofwat at the moment around the PR24 tables, because at the moment, obviously the water companies fill them in a kind of a more human readable format, so Excel templates, which then get converted into a machine readable format for upload to the Ofwat databases. So we're looking for ways to streamline that process so that we can effectively create them in a machine and human readable format once, and then potentially publish that for multiple reasons, not least of all, obviously, the regulatory process. So yes, I think there are a lot of instances where water companies are having to share the same data multiple times with different regulators. So again, looking for opportunities to streamline that, publish it once, and it be consumed and used for an array of either open or shared use cases.
Thank you, Melissa.
I think maybe just to build on that slightly, I think one thing that we've noted is that often the data sets that have that level of alignment across water companies are those regulated data sets. So that potentially accelerates us releasing data at a national level and means people can use it from day one. And that's one of the reasons why we've gone with the drinking water quality data as part of our minimum viable product, because that is to drinking water inspectorate standards. Most water companies have that data stored in a very similar format, which has enabled us to do that data alignment and publishing much quicker than we would have had to do if you're trying to standardize some other data sets that are not in that consistent format. So I think there will be quite a lot of data that we were able to publish quite quickly in the next few years. That is data that's regularly published to the regulators.
Amazing, thank you. And then Olu has just asked, as Stream develops and matures, how does UCWIA's national mains and sewerage failure database fit within it?
Well, I think that's probably an example of one of those decentralized data sets. So it can remain sitting where it sits currently. It can be surfaced and catalogued through Stream to make it more easily accessible, depending on the permissions, obviously associated with who can see and access that database. So it just means that we can enrich the catalogue of data sets that are available, so people don't have to go and search individual websites to be able to try and find these data sets. Actually, it's easier to find them in one place through the Stream portal. We can connect to data wherever it resides, as long as it's been published with a set of permissions and made available.
I think Jim just had a follow-on question from that, asking, is the work on the National Underground Asset Register linked to this work, or are there connections?
I mean, again, I suppose that's another example of data that's been brought together around a use case. It's a shared data use case, so it's a permissions model, and again, we can catalogue that, but obviously we can't surface the data. We would just be able to signpost people to it, and then they would be able to go through a registration process, and if they're authorised, they can access it. So again, it's separate too, but can be made visible, findable, understandable, and potentially accessible via Stream.
Yeah, I think also, that is a data set that's kind of gone ahead of some of the work we've done within Stream. So definitely we're looking to learn from the Nuar team, the work that they've done. And when we are looking certainly at network type data, so data about the underground pipes and networks, using their standardized approach for how to reference that data, how to manage the geospatial elements of that. I think there's a huge amount that we can learn. So there will be certain use cases where we lean quite heavily on the work that's gone before with Nuar, to make sure that we have that level, because every water company is kind of going through this process of making sure their own internal data sets can be compatible with standards for Nuar. So once you have those standards that are adopted industry wide, that makes it much easier for us to kind of follow on the heels of those and go, okay, any data sets we're going to release, we'll make sure that we comply with those standards as well. We don't want to start inventing new standards if things exist and have already been widely adopted.
Perfect, thank you. And then Catherine has just asked, will you be looking to add in other water sampling done by external companies such as facilities management companies?
I think we probably have to look at that in detail, because I think, going back to the point I think Andrew made around not making that identifiable to a particular property, would have to be considered in that. But yeah, but please connect through, and we'll look into that.
Yeah, I would say we're definitely keen that it's not just water company data that can be surfaced as part of Stream. We are looking for third-party data sets that relate to the water sector. It is about water data, it's not about water company data. So absolutely, if we can get those into a consistent format that can be used alongside, that's only going to give that better picture of the the issue. And I guess one of the earlier questions around the river water and bathing water quality, again, that's another area where we know there's a lot of citizen science going on, and bringing those additional data sets in to be used and to be interoperable with what we can publish as water companies is just going to give that more joined up picture.
Perfect, thank you. And then Jim's just asked, can Stream Open Data Platform link through to Discover Water with the aim of giving people a one-stop shop?
Yeah, that's a conversation we've already had with CC Water well, we'll look for the opportunities where, again, this is one of those scenarios where a lot of data is being sent to multiple places from water companies. Actually, can we take the strain out of that and publish the data that can then be picked up by Discover Water and consumed for that particular use case? So yes, I suppose is the short answer to that question.
Perfect. Andrew, did you want to add anything, or are you happy there?
I mean, one thing maybe is Discover Water tends to be quite high level data, where some of the data we're looking to publish might be the lower level data that enables people to understand the more in-depth trends, whether that's, you know, geographic differences within regions or more individual kind of data. So people that are really interested in the data sets on Discover Water can delve into a bit more detail, perhaps once we start getting more of those associated data sets released via Stream. And, you know, the drinking water quality one might be, you know, one of the first examples of that, where we could potentially link through to that, so people who do want to know more can get a bit more detail.
Perfect, thank you. And then just a final question from Adam. Will this be a way for people to access their own data, e.g. bills and consumption, perhaps through a third-party app like Open Banking does?
So I don't think it will replace like company, you know, water company apps in terms of being able to access bill information. However, I think it'll be interesting to see how the work that Gavin talked about with regards to the Smart Data Council, which is all about customer data, how that plays out and where Stream fits within that. Certainly, the trust framework at the heart of Stream will facilitate the secure sharing of sensitive data with trusted parties, be that on consent or permission. And so I think, yeah, it's difficult to say at this stage, but I think we're interested to see how that conversation plays out. And there's some work in the next 12 to 18 months associated with that Smart Data Council being run in conjunction with the ODI Smart Data Challenge, where I think some of these use cases potentially will be put forward and supported by multiple sectors.
Thank you, Melissa. Andrew, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that all, or?
I mean, I think that's anything relating to kind of individual customers, I think is probably going to be more of a long-term ambition. It's certainly not one that's on the kind of the short-term horizon, but yeah, we're definitely very keen to look at what's happening in other sectors and learn from that. And I think we will be doing other work that helps inform that over the time. I know we are keen to look at what we can do with things like smart meter data and consumption data to get some of those data sets potentially released as open data. So I think there'll be a lot of work that we're doing that will help inform that picture and hopefully get us to that direction. But yeah, it's not an immediate priority at the moment, but definitely one we're keen to engage with and monitor the progress.
Perfect, thanks guys. So that was the final question. There is just a couple more comments from Steve and Jonathan relating to earlier questions, which I'll pass along to you both after the showcase, and we'll try and get some answers back. And yeah, so I think that wraps up today's showcase. Thank you to everybody who has taken time out of their day today to join us. We hope you found it valuable. We've just put a poll in the chat. If you could just take a moment to give us some feedback using that poll, that would be much appreciated. Thank you also to the team from Stream for sharing their project learnings with us so openly today. It's been great to hear more about the project, and we've had some really great questions on the back of that. Just so everybody knows, we'll be posting the recording of today's showcase on our platform soon, along with the case study too, which should be available within the next week. And any questions that didn't get around to being answered today, I will also pop them into a spreadsheet to post alongside the case study. So yeah, thanks again everyone for coming, and have a lovely rest of your day.